Hello students, and welcome to part 2 of the Renewable Energy Lecture Series. Today we're going to be talking about solar power. And solar power is a little bit more complicated than it sounds because it's more than just solar electricity plants or solar panels on your roof. There are several different types of solar power, so we're going to quickly run through each of those. All right, so first off, before we get to just regular solar power, what you think of as being solar power, solar panels, etc., realize that a lot of our energy comes from the sun. So, and not just all of not just a lot of our renewable energy. So of course, solar power, that's kind of obvious that comes from the sun. Hydropower is actually a solar energy. And the reason for that is that hydropower relies on falling water to create your electricity. Well, how does that water get to the tops of your mountains, hills, etc.? Through evaporation. And what evaporates that water but the sun? Wind power is also a solar energy because what drives wind is differential heating on Earth's surface. And what heats Earth's surface is the sun. And then biomass. And in biomass, you could actually throw in all of fossil fuels because what biomass is looking at plants to provide your energy. And plants, of course, get their energy from the sun. So, and then all fossil fuels are from ancient plants that have been compacted into oils and coal, etc., come from the sun. So of our renewables, what is actually independent of the sun? These guys, geothermal power. And that's coming from heat within the earth, so that's independent of the sun. Hydrogen fuel, I wrote maybe, because hydrogen fuel, in order to make that fuel, you have to split water or split methane to get that hydrogen. And if you're using solar power to do it, then that's actually a form of solar power. And then tidal energy, I wrote mostly because most of the tides come from the moon, but a certain amount of our tidal energy also comes from the sun. All right, so there's different types of solar. We're going to start with the easy one, and that's passive. Passive means you're not building any machines. There's no solar panels. You're just using smart design, smart architecture, green architecture to get your heating and cooling. So sunlight, you can capture it or you can block it in different ways. So in the wintertime, when you want to heat your home, the sun is low. And so you design your house so that winter sun can get in. And then you have materials inside your house that will absorb that heat and re-radiate it back slowly. In the summertime, when you want to block that sun because it's too hot, you create eaves and whatnot to keep that summer sun that is higher in the sky from being able to come into your house. So again, you use materials in your house to soak in that heat and then re-radiate it. And the slowly is important because, you know, if it radiates it too fast, it's going to make it hot for a short period of time. You want a slow re-radiation so that it will heat your home for a longer period of time. All right, and then you know, it's super cheap as long as you're building from scratch this way. If you're trying to convert an existing home to a passive solar heated home, a little bit more difficult, you know, so you can't just add eaves easily or those materials. But if you're designing a house from scratch, this is actually a fairly inexpensive way to get some energy efficiency. All right, so there's various ways to get that passive home design. And you can see you can Google these things. This is from the New York Times, but there's various ways to look. Getting triple paned windows that are super energy efficient. They're not going to let heat leak out. Various fans to get circulation throughout your house. There's lots of building materials. There's a lot going on all the time to make our homes more energy efficient. And as far as looking at solutions to energy usage, looking at green architecture, green design would be a good thing to look at. All right, so active solar heating is when you do start using solar panels. And for solar heating, it means that you're just using those solar panels not for electricity, but just to heat your home. So you have a hot water tank that is maybe being heated with what the solar panels are doing from your roof. And again, you can basically supply a building's space and water heating needs by using these panels. This is kind of cool. They put them on the balconies of that apartment building. All right, so this is rooftop solar hot water apartment in China. And again, if you have all that rooftop space, why not use it for solar? All right, so what are the pros and cons of active and passive? So, you know, the sun is free. It's going to shine whether or not we use it. Net energy yield is high as long as it's passive. It's moderate for active. And then technology is, you know, well developed and easily installed. It doesn't take up a lot of land space if you're putting it on your roofs. And then it's carbon free. Cons, so the solar rights is a bit weird, but we have something called view rights sometimes here in Seattle. Solar rights would be, so you want solar for your house, but what if your neighbor builds a taller house and now all of a sudden your solar's blocked? That would be bad, especially if you paid a lot of money for your solar panels and then all of a sudden your neighbor who had a one-story house now tears it down and builds one of those big 3-story boxes. Now all of a sudden your light's gone. So you got to be careful of that. I don't know that solar rights even exist in a lot of places. Some people don't like solar panels. They think they're ugly. I think they're cool looking. And this is an example of one done well. This is one of an example of a house on the right that's just not done so well. And then active systems can be quite expensive without subsidies and whatnot. All right, so let's move on to solar electricity. So if you're going to use solar power to produce electricity, the technology for that's fairly well developed, but it could be better. You basically use photovoltaic cells, and the sunlight comes in and it excites the little electrons in there, and it can get current moving. So you use silicon for that, which is not always an inexpensive thing to manufacture. And then, it says it's stored in batteries for use when the sun is not shining. We're still kind of early on our battery technology for having enough battery storage. So a better solution, which is what we do in this area, because if you don't want to buy it, and power walls are just out the last few years, but before that, you had to devote a whole room to your battery technology. There's something called net metering, where say you have solar panels on your roof, when you're not at home and you're at work, you're not using all that electricity that your solar panels are generating, it sends it back into the grid so that other people can use it. And then you get a discount on your electricity bill. Basically, your meter runs backwards and you get a credit for that solar energy you just sent back into the grid. It's a great idea. Sometimes power companies are not so excited about it because they're maintaining the infrastructure, but the people with the solar panels then are not paying into it. All right, so as far as looking at solar capability, the Southwest is obviously going to be the best area, but there's a lot of people up here in Washington State who have solar too. We have good solar capability in the summertime, less in the wintertime, but you don't have to be sunny year round for solar. But again, if you're going to be looking at where you want to build your biggest solar plants, you should be looking at the Southwest of the United States. It's dry, it's arid, desert, doesn't rain a lot, etc. All right, so net metering, again, you sell that excess electricity back to the grid. It gives financial incentive too, because if you can see your electricity bill going negative, that would be really sweet. So also, or if you just in general have a really low electric bill. So again, there's a two-way flow of electricity on your meter. So your meter, if you're drawing it from the grid, your meter runs forward and you get charged. If you're sending it to the grid, your meter runs backwards and you get a discount. All right, so different ways to have your solar plants. So unlike our fossil fuel plants and our nuclear plants, we're not using some kind of combustion or but we can still make steam. So there's different ways, and these little curved dishes would focus the energy along those lines, and there'll be some kind of fluid or oil in there, and then that is used to generate the steam to turn the turbine to create the electricity. So you can still be using steam in the solar situation. And I just wanted to show you a few new plants. You can actually see this one in Morocco from space. This was just opened in 2016. 1,000 acres of the Sahara Desert, because again, there's not much else use for that land out there. Why not put a whole lot of solar down on it? You can power more than 1 million homes with that solar plant. It's only one of 3 phases. There are going to be, so Morocco had been relying 97% on imported energy. This is going to change their picture. And not only is this, once it's built, it's going to be a cheap way to get energy, they will become less reliant on other countries for their energy. And on top of it, it's carbon free. This one's just so cool. The panda plant, you saw that on the very first slide also. So, why not make it beautiful if you're going to be seeing it from the air? So they basically made a solar plant in the shape of a panda. That's just cool. All right, so what are the pros and cons of solar power? Pros: no greenhouse emissions. It's quiet and reliable. Get a high net energy yield once it's built. All right, and then plentiful supply in some areas like our arid Southwest. What are the downsides of solar? It's expensive. The solar panels, it'd be nice too. It also takes up a lot of space, large land area required. So one place I think where we could see improvement is solar panels that would get more electricity per square meter. Can we advance the technology, kind of like with phones? Cell phones started out super huge, and now our cell phones are super tiny. So could we do the same thing with solar panels? Get the same amount of electricity, or more electricity from the same footprint, or the same amount of electricity from a much smaller panel, and then we could take those plants and get a lot more electricity out of it. Only some parts of the country are really suitable for large-scale production. And this is a big con. How are you going to store it? And again, we don't have the technology to store large amounts of electricity for long. It's coming, but it's not here yet. And so this is not a 24/7 solution. We can't go to full 100% solar for our electricity needs. All right, so some more new ideas. Solar roadways. We have all of this paved surface, like think of all the roads all over the planet. What if we started replacing those with solar panels? Now, most solar panels wouldn't be able to take large scale trucks and whatnot driving down it, but there's companies that are out there that are designing roadways that could actually generate electricity as well as being roads to get you from point A to point B. So these are some cool ideas. There's other ideas like, oh, if there's an animal crossing, this would light up. So if it was nighttime, you may not see the moose or whatever, but you would see the road light up. So this, I think, is pretty cool. So France is putting some of these in, you know, and 4 miles of road will power 1 household's electricity needs. I think that's 4 miles, not 4 meters. 1 kilometer, maybe it is 4 meters. 1 kilometer will light up 5,000 homes. Maximum effect, you could get 8% of France's population on solar roadways. All right, so one of the downsides of these is they're not sure if they're durable enough to take heavy road use. So think of our interstates and whatnot, that we don't know that this would be a kind of a product that would be take up to the kind of abuse that our major roadways take, or even roads that carry lots of buses and whatnot. But if they're little residential roads, I think it would work. All right, so another kind of cool idea, solar parking lots. This is kind of you get 2 things for more bang for your buck. And what I mean by that is that if you have all these parking lots all over the country, why not put solar panels on them? You still need to be able to park your cars though. So the cars would park underneath the solar panels. This would give you a second benefit. Have you ever gotten in your car sitting in a hot parking lot after sitting there for several hours? It's blasting hot. If your car's parked in the shade underneath a solar panel, you won't need to run so much so much air conditioning in your car once you get into it, so it won't be so hot. So why are we not doing this? This seems like a great idea. It's like solar panels are not cheap. So it's just really expensive. And if you own a parking lot, like the cost of putting solar panels in it would just, you know, we would need a big government push for something like this. So, so anyway, but people are always looking for carports, places to park their cars. Like I think this is an idea that we need to explore further. All right, so cooling buildings. We can also cool buildings naturally too. So while solar panels can soak in the heat, in areas where it's really hot, why aren't we doing things like putting white roofs on our buildings like you see in that lower picture? So we have technology to be able to cool our buildings without any like passive cooling. Super insulation, high efficiency windows, overhangs or awnings, like I mentioned earlier. The light colored roofs that would reflect the heat rather than absorb it. Think of all of our black roofs and how much heat they must absorb. Reflective or insulating foil in the attic. Geothermal pumps, and what geothermal pumps is under the ground, it stays cool year round. So if you had these pumps to circulate the air in your house that gets hot into the cool underneath, you could cool your house with just one little pump by circulating the air underneath in that cool ground underneath your house. So that's kind of a cool idea too. All right, and then finally, you know, if we plant things, and you see some buildings around Seattle that have gardens and whatnot on top, you need a roof that's strong enough. You can't just do this with any building. Dirt is extremely heavy if you've ever carried dirt around before. But this would have a few benefits. One, it would take in carbon dioxide because you have plants growing up there. Gardens are beautiful. People who live in the apartment building would want to go hang out up there. And also it would provide a cooling thing of soil. It would kind of provide that dirt would provide insulation for your building. So there's lots of neat ideas out there, but we need to, you know, build them. Again, we have a lot of existing infrastructure. To implement a lot of these, we would need to build new infrastructure. So that is the end of the lecture part 2. Next will be lecture part 3, and I think there's 4 parts total of this series.